This is a production of Off the Hook Sports with Dave Hooker.
Well, with the transfer portal closed, I can't think of anybody better to talk to than Chris Landry of LandryFootball.com. Go to LandryFootball.com, and we're going to discuss what SEC teams did best in the transfer portal. Of course, where did Tennessee fall in that regard as well? And it's brought to you by Craft Treats with their chill pills. They have the chill pills that increase the benefits of your CBD, great for situational anxiety for your pet, things like storm anxiety, car ride anxiety. They also have the bone and joint treats that will, my dog's getting a little bit up there past 10. I say he's fat. My wife argues with me. But nevertheless, he has a little bit more trouble getting up on the bed than he used to. So we've been working with Ben at Craft Treats to get him taken care of. And they have holistic, limited ingredient dog treats so that you're getting your dog something healthy while helping with some of his potential maladies. Chris, we're right around the corner. We are now officially in mid-May, which means we're about a month from SEC Media Days starting. It was about this time last year we were waiting for this monster announcement that Texas and Oklahoma would be joining the SEC, which really, you may have heard about it beforehand. I did not know about it. And I'm curious if you put on the little Johnny Carson prediction hat like he used to wear back in the day, is there anything out there that could happen in SEC Media Days that could surprise us, could catch us out of left field? It's kind of an unfair question, but I'm going to pose it to you anyway.
Well, always say if it's going to surprise and come out of left field, then it wouldn't be a surprise, I guess. You've heard the rumors, but I'll be honest with you, I didn't. I mean, you hear a lot of stuff that the whole Oklahoma-Texas was a bombshell, and kind of fun because I didn't get any wind of it at all, that it was coming down the pike. They kept it quiet, the powers that be did. And from people that, even people like at Texas A&M didn't know. And there are a lot of people in the league didn't know. But it's been something that's been talked about for a while, particularly Texas and Oklahoma. I think what's going to be interesting now is if anything comes out, I wonder if it would have to do with when they're going to be entering. It looks like there's just so much money that they're going to owe. And, we always throw out when it's somebody else, oh, they got the money. But, I know Texas could write the check better than Oklahoma, in terms of, getting out early. But I don't get the sense, Dave, maybe you hear differently, that there's any sense that we're going to get any early movement. And as it gets closer, it's almost 2 years. And I heard something. Here's what I have heard from, at least from an Oklahoma standpoint and from a Texas standpoint, purely football. If you think about this, ask yourself out there, is Oklahoma and Texas ready for SEC football yet?
I would argue no.
Okay. So, and I think while they wouldn't say it publicly, the coaches that I talk with both say at both places, we got some work to do. And that means in recruiting. I think there's a belief amongst the football people, and they won't tell you this, they won't say anything. I think they want to build up their roster so that they're better able to handle SEC play. And I think it's going to take 2 years. I think they would vote for, not that they're going to have the vote, to, hey, let's just kind of get this ball rolling to maybe in 2 years we got something that's more SEC worthy, because I would say that both of those programs look like, they certainly don't look anything like Alabama and Georgia. And I think that they could fit in the mix within the top 5 or 6. But in terms of being on the par with, say, top 2, 3, 4, I don't think they're there. And maybe in a couple of years we'll better prep them for that.
Yeah, I guess it had been 2 years ago. Now that time flies since that announcement was made. And I think we all kind of thought that might just happen in the next couple of weeks. That's pretty impossible with schedules. And we thought that they just, kind of like a girlfriend, just might make the clean break. That didn't happen. And I think you're right. I think that when you talk about Texas and Oklahoma, they want to build up those rosters for the first time in decades. Texas didn't have one player drafted into the NFL. That's still it is the staggering stat to me of this entire calendar season, regardless of sport. Okay, so let's look at the SEC, the teams in the portal with the SEC, the players in the portal with the SEC. What teams are best suited, Chris, to take advantage of a transfer portal? Because I'm going to throw about 5 at you and tell me what you think. Obviously, Texas and Oklahoma, they're going to have the money. Let's go ahead and include them in the SEC. I would argue a school like Tennessee, because they are in a bigger city than most. Vanderbilt's in the biggest city in the SEC, but Vanderbilt's Vanderbilt. I would argue that Alabama and Georgia, because of the history they have of developing players and getting them ready for the NFL, if the money's equal and my son asks me, should I go play football at Alabama or somewhere else, I'm going to lean towards Alabama. I like LSU with the population density they have there and the talent. Those are just the teams that come to mind in the forefront that already have a recruiting base, that have the finances, not through the schools, Chris, but through the individual businesses involved that can provide that type of money. What do you think of those schools I mentioned, and what other schools should benefit greatly from the transfer portal?
I think I was listening pretty good. You didn't mention A&M, or did you?
No, I didn't, and there's a lot of money there, and I should have.
Yeah, that's probably the number one in terms of money. I think there are a number of ways we need to look at this, and I think it's really early. But you went down the path of money opportunity. I would probably say that A&M is willing to spend as much money and do as much, and I think they have proven they're kind of ahead of the curve on their willingness to do it. Now, a lot of people will say, well, wait a minute. They clearly enticed in recruiting, which is not legal and all that. I don't want to go down that path right now. But I think they would probably be there. Listen, I think Alabama is now. I think that Nick Saban's talking a lot of, well, we're not going to do this, and we're going to have everybody make the certain amount. And so that may affect what they're doing. Here's the thing about the transfer portal. Ideally, what you want is to recruit the best players in high school, and you have the least amount of transfers as possible. And let's just take Alabama. The guys that transfer are the guys that are not buying into the program or haven't been as successful. So they're basically kicking him into the portal. So that allows them to go and sign an Eli Ricks, and he's gotten into trouble off the field recently. Jahmyr Gibbs, people like that. Jamison Williams last year. So, I see them differently, Dave. I see Alabama as doing their own thing, not having many people that want to transfer unless they're not having the playing time or they're not being as good, because that's probably the place you want to be if you're going to compete for championships, number one. But so I think Alabama is going to be more about quality, not quantity. Like, I would say they had maybe as good of a transfer portal as anybody this year. They only got 5. They don't need that many. Whereas a team that's interesting, and you mentioned, all right, so LSU, they maybe was as active as anybody along with Ole Miss. That's because they're in a major transition. So they got ideally LSU would be more like Alabama in 3 years because they're recruiting and keeping their guys. You know who was the least active in the transfer portal? If you were ranking, it was Georgia. Well, they lost guys in the draft, but they didn't lose many guys. So I don't know that activity is going to meet. But in terms of the NIL transfer portal, they're separate, but they're the same. I would say the most active team to watch is going to be Ole Miss, because they are going to have to recruit out of the transfer portal because they are not able to recruit the elite players. And for Lane to get the type of 4-star guys and an occasional 5-star, it's going to have to come from another school with a player who was a 4 or 5-star that didn't get a lot of playing time. Now, are they going to rank this high on the money scale as a Tennessee or an LSU or an Alabama or a Georgia? No. So they're not going to have, but will they do it strategically, Dave? Will they pay the quarterback? Will they pay the skill position guy? And, is that going to be enough? Well, at Ole Miss, winning 8 games, winning 9 games is a great season. You're not going to compete for championships at Ole Miss under any circumstances. That's getting it done. So I would say that you're right, that Alabama, Georgia are going to have the financial resources. Texas will, Oklahoma will, A&M absolutely is and will. I think the one program to watch is A&M. They're spending the most money in the league. I mean, Texas, along with Texas is not technically in here yet. So, but what will A&M do? They haven't won anything yet. They lost 4 games last year. Yeah, they beat Alabama, but they've got to win and sustain. And here's the other thing we've talked about before is you can bring a lot of these players. What is it going to do to your locker room chemistry? You can get really good players, great players, but if you can't get them to work together and they're all about what I'm getting, and I'm looking out for my money and my future, it doesn't mean you're going to have a great team. It means you're going to have a talented team. So let's see if A&M can do it, because they've not been able to do it. Other than the COVID year, they've not really had much success. And I think it's coming for Jimbo, but let's let it come first, because right now they lead the hype train in transfer portal and NIL. I'm curious to see where this leads them this year, next year, and the year after on the field record-wise.
I want to make another argument for Tennessee, and you tell me if I'm crazy. First, I remind you that our conversation with Chris today, Chalk Talk, brought to you by Craft Treats, anti-inflammatory properties, pain reduction benefits that can help with the arthritis of your pet. Click on this link and get 15% off. And whether it's anxiety or it's just pain from getting a little bit up there in dog years, whether it's just treats such as the Hungry and Howlin', the Farm to Treat, a great choice for dogs who eat raw chicken, lamb, and sweet potato flavors are available. So go ahead and click on the link, get 15% off. Thanks to me and thanks to our friends at Craft Treats. I'm going to make another argument for Tennessee, and as you know, feel free to. The thing I love about the relationship I have with Chris in a very nicely way will tell me, Dave, you're crazy, you're off base. So he may tell me that, and that's fine. I argue that other than the deep pockets of the A&Ms and the Texases of the world, that Tennessee is best poised because it is a one-horse town. A lot of these are. I can tell you that my Christmas was more bountiful when Tennessee did well. The economy is tied to that program. It just is. I can't explain it, but it is. And you have a lot of business people who have this money set aside for marketing, that if you tell them that, hey, I could have a guy in the NIL that could endorse me, I could bring him over through the transfer portal, and it's money I'm spending in the market anyway, why not go ahead and associate it with him? Because I think that can help the program. That's why I think Tennessee is that one team that might surprise some people with the amount of benefit they could draw from the portal and NIL. Am I wrong?
No, I think they can. I think they have the money.
And desperation. Desperation is the one thing.
There's no question. Yeah, they're the. Look, I mean, we don't need to spend any more time than we already have, and people have talked about in East Tennessee and really in the SEC as a whole about Tennessee's travails the past several years. There's a excitement level of, my God, at least, we're not back, but there's we've got life. We were on life support, and maybe even we're calling the funeral director over the past few years. There's a passionate level that is seen in very few, and it does matter. It is important, and I think they do have the money, so they absolutely have it. Now, I think how they evaluate and utilize it, like for example, it's early. I do not want to evaluate it, but I would say Tennessee, at least in the transfer portal success this year, in terms of where their needs were and who they got, probably in the bottom tier. Now, what does that really mean? Well, we're talking transfer portal and we're talking NIL. It's two different. I just talked about A&M, where A&M was probably the worst in transfer portal, other than Georgia, in terms of activity. Well, that's because they're building it differently. So I don't know that you want to be ranked high in transfer portal, because I think if you are, that means you're losing a lot of guys, maybe some key guys. We saw Tennessee get just gutted recently in the transfer portal last year, past couple of years. I think building from the ground up is where you want to go. I think there's no shortage of money. I think there's every reason to build it up. Will they build it up the right way? Will they be stable? Will they play good enough at the line of scrimmage, be good enough defensively? That, to me, is the more interesting thing going forward for me with Tennessee, is what type of program will they be? Will they be the Oklahoma of the SEC? And I know you're saying, well, Landry, Oklahoma is coming. I'm talking about the Oklahoma of the Big 12 under Lincoln Riley, where they had great offenses and they won the Big 12. But they really didn't have the defensive style because of the offensive pace to do much once they got to the national playoffs. Now, the Tennessee fans would love to get to that point where they'd be talking about not winning in the national playoffs. That would be a win, right?
Yeah,
but
that would be huge.
You're not going to the playoffs, and you're not winning the East if you play the style that Oklahoma did. And so that's my concern on the field. So I think that their ability to have success on the field is going to determine, hey, it's the it place to be. Tennessee needs to become a it thing again. We gotta go there, because now I do believe they're on pace to being, man, if you're a quarterback, man, if you're a playmaking receiver, a skill guy on offense, that is developing into an it place to go as a recruit, as a transfer portal guy. But are the other areas, are they there yet? I'd say not yet. Let's see where they are. So again, Ole Miss, 15 guys that they brought in. They needed to bring in guys. They did a really good job because they got numbers and it helped them in quality. Tennessee, 11 guys, the quality not as good, but they, as we talked about last week, some quality guys. So let's see what they do with it. It's not just about the money, as we all know. Money gives you a chance, Dave, but we all know, do you spend the money the right way and do you develop them? That's what we need to see about all of these teams, Tennessee included.
It's the best situation that Tennessee athletics has been in well over a decade. And I go back to Philip Fulmer. We could argue whether or not he should have been fired, but clearly the administration wanted to change. That was about the time that Pat Summitt fell upon her very untimely illness. And it was about the time that a little bit later that Bruce Pearl was involved in the NCAA issues. They've gone through all that, not to mention a guy that's head looks like a bullet, and Jeremy Pruitt, and Butch Jones, who may be a sociopath, and I could go on and on and on. This is the best time. And I mean, watching Grant Williams drill threes last night for the Celtics, and I'm like, people are talking about Tennessee, and this has not happened in 15 years, other than who's the next coach going to be. So,
and by the way, let me jump in there.
Yeah,
I mean, I watch it, I follow it, but I work at Football 365. I mean, and I know you've my God, did you even know how many people even knew outside of East Tennessee that Rob Delmonico was the head baseball coach? I mean, you didn't even know. It wasn't even on the map. It was like just nothing. Now it's going to be fun to see what they do. And I'll say this, in Baton Rouge, where, I think college baseball is still a niche sport. It gives the fans something to look forward to after basketball season's over, tide them over to football season. I just think when you have some success and you have a program that's as good as Tennessee baseball, and you see what Jeremy's doing, and you see the consistency in basketball, I know they're disappointed in tournament. I agree with you. I'm excited, and I'm more interested in the football part of it. What is it going to mean for that program building it? That's what I think Tennessee's the most intriguing team to watch in terms of a program, not this year and what their record's going to be, but where this football program goes and the philosophical involvement. I think if by Josh is going to be one to watch it. I'm excited to watch.
Well, I've been told also that they've kind of established what they do in a recruiting standpoint, in that they show you the mountains, they show you the lake, they show you all these different things, because they realize anybody can produce the type of money that they can produce in NIL. They also realize that there are a lot of other schools that have had more success. So there's kind of a difference in the pitching shift. And I think part of that is Tony Vitello with the baseball team, because it's too bad that females don't play football as well, because I can tell you every time Tony Vitello is on TV, my wife goes, is that the manager? Is that the I'm like, yeah, they got Magnum PI as their manager. I don't want to hear about it.
And maybe if you, I think what their recruiting pitch ought to be, if I were Josh, I'd say, take all the mamas and give them a ride. Have Tony Vitello give the mamas a ride in the Maserati, I believe he has, that he drives around town. Maybe it's another exotic car. I would do that. I think that would be a deal cincher.
The guy's living the dream. And anyway, good for Tony Vitello. Again, 15% off, whether you're talking about the CBD aids for your pets, which can help with anxiety, or they can also, of course, help with pain in terms of arthritis. But they've also just got great treats, and your dog is going to love them. And so want to be sure that you check those out. That is Craft Treats, and you can click on this link for 15% off. That's right, 15% off. We'll see you next week, or you can also follow us around as well. We'll be on a Facebook page talking about barbecue if you want to go to Alice Nest Barbecue. And also, we've got some more players we're going to add to the fold. So we love talking to Jacob Warren, and we also love talking to Cooper Mays, who I knew his dad, which makes me feel old. And we got another surprise player or two that we'll be adding the fold. So we're growing, and I want to remind you the Off the Hook Sports website goes live June the 6th. Butterflies or not, because they're there, brother. He's Chris Landry. I'm Dave Hooker. We'll talk to you next time on Chalk Talk.